I'm Jacob.
I'm Yuri.
And we are going for a drive.
'20 BMW X4M
Competition on the racetrack at Monticello Motor Club.
You probably watched our X3M competition review, and that's why you're here. We did that one on the road.
Yeah, so this is going to be a full track review. We are going to blast these things on the racetrack, only the X4Ms.
So what is the horsepower and torque?
503 horsepower, 442 pound-feet of torque from a 3-liter inline 6 with a twin turbo setup.
Instead of punching it, turn it. Turn.
All right, here we go. Turn in. Let's see how direct it is. Honestly, as much as that sounds pretty funny to say, it is very direct. I have to keep reminding myself that I'm in an SUV. Sorry, as BMW would call it, SAC, a SAC.
But when you're driving, it does move around a lot. Like, it gets through it, but you feel the movement.
Yeah, it still does feel heavy. You're still in a really big car, but it hides its weight relatively well for how big this thing is.
But who's even taking this to track? This is kind of like if you have a fast car and your buddies are going, so you want to bring this out too.
Yeah, or if you just bring your buddies and by the way, my race car broke, I'm just going to take my personal car and you will still have a great time.
So we are not in full traction off. That's why we are not sliding right now.
Yeah, you can still get the back end out a little bit and a little bit more if you try really hard, but it's still very well controlled. It's not like the 3 Series, which we drove in Portugal.
Yeah, that thing would just drift in MDM. This thing doesn't. Maybe a tiny bit out.
Yeah, there's definitely more understeer here than there is in the 3 Series, but this is really big. But the suspension is so stiff that I've actually been seeing the front left wheel lift on the car in front of me when we do lead follow here. But it's not uncomfortably stiff in any way, and you can actually drive this in the full Sport Plus mode in every mode possible. Unlike some cars where you have to dial it back, I don't think you have to dial it back in this.
Yeah, so we're doing Sport Plus on the track and on the street, and it was just as good on both.
Exactly. This is like very controllable, very good for Sport Plus. Should do a launch control. I know we're on a racetrack, but we're actually allowed to stop here.
Go.
Here we go. Traction fully off because I'm in NBM Sport. Ready?
Man, there's like nothing right off that start.
Yeah, I know. It's just that initial bite. There's just nothing there. And then you go.
So how does that exhaust tone sound on the track?
Honestly, it kind of isn't that exciting from the driver's seat.
And worse than not being exciting, it's hard to know when to shift.
Yeah, so we do have the head-up display, which I am grateful for, which Yuri is not, but we'll get to that in a little bit.
Huge rant.
So I am using it to my full potential, but I'm still missing some shifts because I'm waiting for it to flash, but by the time I wait for the last flash, it's too late and then I'm bogging down.
But how are the steering wheel mounted paddles for shifting?
They're fantastic. They're a little small, but they're fine.
It's nice because your paddles are always in your hand while you're turning. All these people who say column mounted shifting is better because you know where it is. It doesn't matter if you know where it is if you can't get your hand there.
Exactly. If you take your hands off the wheel here, you're doing something wrong unless you're at some really crazy racetrack, which I've yet to attend. And this thing is seriously fast. It does feel like it's pulling pretty hard and it's got pretty good pulling power and it doesn't really run out. Like on the straight, I'm hitting pretty fast speeds. I haven't really looked down. I think I saw 140 miles per hour or something.
And the reason you haven't looked down is because it's super hard to see anything that's going on your gauge cluster. I'll get into that later.
Yeah, it's gonna be pretty funny.
Rant.
But yeah, you are right about some of that. But let's talk more steering stuff because I've had no issues with this on the racetrack. You know exactly where your wheels are. It feels great.
It is surprisingly good for an SUV.
It's just shocking how good this handles for being an SUV. SAC, BMW, what they say. By the way, SAC stands for Sports Activity Coupe, because this is apparently a coupe.
But the coupe looks friggin' awesome from behind on the track.
It looks kind of funny. Like, I'm not sure what I'm looking at in front of me.
It's very Mercedes coupe-esque.
Well, I think BMW invented the coupe stuff.
Yeah, I guess I've seen
for
more.
SUVs.
It looks good.
It looks, well, you can say that. I will say it looks like something that I would rather have the X3M.
But back to that exhaust real quick. So those burbles, we don't hear them ever.
Nothing. Not an ounce of burble while on the racetrack.
And then when you're getting close to red line, you kind of can't tell exactly when.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been short shifting a lot, and I think you have too.
Yeah, because once you bog down once, you're like, F this, I need to get through here.
Exactly. I actually debated putting it in auto and just letting it handle anything, but I didn't do it.
So the first lap I did in auto, it was pretty all right, but just not as exciting, not nearly close.
Did it downshift for you?
Yeah, it did everything just fine. but like I didn't really know it because it wasn't as loud and like punchy.
Right, and you didn't get that much out of it because you're not having as much fun because you're not controlling it yourself.
It didn't spark joy.
And this thing does have a lot of grip. It's understeering a little bit, but that's when you're pretty much beyond the limit anyways. And I find that it does feel kind of rear-wheel drivey, but the front wheels just kind of help you along when you need to.
Yeah, you can definitely feel the rear-wheel driviness when you take a corner like really quick right at the edge, and it'll just slip out enough and pull you right through.
Yeah, it does feel like the diff is actually doing something because this does have the M Performance diff, which is all-wheel drive, but mostly rear-wheel drive. I'm gonna floor it on the straight, hit this curb, and send Yuri into the driver's seat to complain about some things.
But I will have fun.
Oh yeah, you will.
All right, first complaint, I need to turn off the head-up display through the confusing infotainment. There's no hard button for it.
But at least it is the older infotainment, so it's a little bit easier to find the head-up display to turn off.
I disagree. I could have said, hey BMW, head-up display in the new one. This one I've got to dig.
All right, fine.
And the reason the head-up display blocks it all is because the tach comes all the way up. There's like no little line at the bottom that just flashes when it's time to shift.
I did notice some of your complaints, and you are right.
Yeah, people like me, I guess your eyes start getting distracted by something and there's nothing you can do about it. Maybe you can like block it out and not care.
I try to look way past it, and then I'm fine.
My next complaint, after I turn off the head-up display, then you've got your speed on your digital gauge cluster. But the problem there is it's so small and hard to see. It's not big and in the middle. And then when I was going 120 miles an hour, you know what happened? The needle blocked the speed.
That is really funny, actually.
I only knew later when I looked where the needle had to be to block it. That brings me to my next gripe. When you're shifting with the head-up display off, you get your shift light in your tachometer.
Yeah, so it actually just completely changes how it looks.
Yeah, it bubbles up in red and then flashes yellow. But the problem is, if you're turning left, your hand blocks it so you can't see it.
That's kind of funny.
There's pretty much a whole bunch of things that ruin the track experience.
In terms of the gauges for you.
Yeah, and its user interface. Like the car is great. It drives really fast, and I'm totally shocked by how quickly I can get through everything in a big SAC. And it's something like the Alfa Romeo Stelvio I would love to see on the track because those shift lights were so great, but then I think the paddles would make it a little bit harder to get into the right gear.
Yeah, on certain corners, because you do have to upshift or downshift here.
But the gauges were perfect.
Yeah, the gauges were great. But I've had pretty much none of the issues that you've complained about. I've just kind of worked through them. It's fine, but I see why you have those problems.
It's just something that could be fixed. And because this car is not as loud as say like an older car with worse insulation, you can't hear that shift point.
Yeah, the sound is definitely pumped in, but the tone of the sound at the highest RPM when you think you need to shift just doesn't feel right. It feels like it can keep going. And we do have a 7,200 RPM red line, which is fairly high.
But back to the good stuff, this thing handles like crazy. It actually grips so hard. On some of the high-speed turns, it was insane what we got away with.
Yeah, exactly. And the way it transitions its weight from left to right on certain corners is actually pretty crazy. It really hides its weight quite well for what it is.
And I absolutely love looking at these things in front of me. I love the coupe body style. I think I would go Team Coupe even though it's uglier.
Ugh, no, can't do that. How's your rear visibility in the coupe?
Oh, you know what? It is noticeably worse than in the X3.
It is.
But, you know, you can see a lot farther down like you couldn't in the Veloster N. So I don't mind it at all.
And which steering mode do you enjoy the most on the racetrack?
I've really only used Comfort because that's what they set us up in.
I tried both, and I do prefer Comfort. So all it changes is the weight, basically. I think the amount of turn that you get, I don't really notice a difference, but it's the weight of the steering that basically just adds more.
Yeah, and I think with such a girthy steering wheel, your hands already get pretty sore if you're not used to the BMW steering wheel.
Yeah, exactly.
So Comfort probably does help a bit.
And something else that we also noticed on the road, but we didn't comment on it because we kind of forgot. We're going to comment on it now. When you let off on this thing, the power,
the engine just stops running. It actually deactivates some cylinders to help stop the torque.
Yeah, it's the most abrupt stop ever. So if you don't drive very smoothly, it'll actually punish you. You got to be smooth on the throttle because it's just like, boom, as soon as you let off the throttle, it kind of feels like you're hitting the brakes.
Which is the complete opposite from that Infiniti we drove, that when you let off the throttle, it keeps pushing you forward.
Exactly. So because I hated that Infiniti so much, I am not complaining about this because that is not a problem. I just want to comment that it is there. How was that?
A lot of fun. I was actually so surprised at how well this thing handled.
Don't you have to constantly remind yourself in your head that you're not in a car?
Half and half. I think it helps seeing one in front of me.
But the way it handles, like if you just think about the way it handles, the power that it has,
yeah, you know,
the lack of lag.
I'm way faster than I should be, and like no wonder people are trying to set SUV world records on the Nürburgring.
Exactly.
Which you've been on.
Yes, I have.
Twice.
2 laps, 1 time. I look forward to taking one of these on the Nürburgring. Thank you, BMW. No, it's not happening.
Yeah. And if we were going to track an X4M competition on our own time, what would be the Continental recommended tire?
The Sport Contact 6. So overall, we've driven the X3M Competition on the road and the X4M on the racetrack. This is a very good handling vehicle, and I think, again, like we said in the X3M review, it's the best balance between all of the super SUVs.
Overall has the most points, I think.
And this is still very fast and very fun to drive. If you were going to take it to the racetrack for some reason, which I really don't think anyone's really going to do, I think you'd still have a good time, because we're having a good time here.
Yeah, I want you to leave a comment if you've taken your fast SUV to the racetrack. Why? How did it go? Did anything overheat? Why didn't you take a car instead? Like, I really, really want to know for journalistic purposes.
And we're gonna flash the price up right here because I forget what it is. I believe it's about $94,600.
And visor test.
Here we go.
3, 2, 1. Passes.
Good job.
Will it fit a small cup of coffee? We still don't know. We didn't find a Dunkin' Donuts.
And we don't have any boxes once again, but sorry.
But we had a lot of fun in this X4M on the track.
So let us know what you guys think. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell.
Patreon.com/TheStraightPipes. Join our YouTube membership. Teespring for shirts.
And send it!